Week. It's the African Climate Week. Now, just to bring you to speed, that Africa is facing several impacts on climate change. In Uganda, for example, we have witnessed the flooding, landslides and all that. Now, this week we are having this conversation that is under the UNDP, and we just want to find lasting solutions on how best we can engage this. Now, the high-level conversation of this is already underway in Germany, and I'll be your host here back here in Uganda to make sure that this conversation already will pick it up from there. Currently, the minister is addressing the German forum on this. Let's pick it up on Spark TV, and later on, we'll be back here on NTV to have the conversation. Good morning.
Mr. Spinoza has an impeccable record in the diplomatic and political circles, having been an ambassador for a long time and also served as a Minister of Foreign Affairs for Mexico from 2006 and 2012. Excellencies, I now have the honor to virtually invite Ms. Patricia to deliver her message. Technical team, please.
It's a pleasure to officially launch this milestone event on our climate calendar and a vital step towards COP26, the Africa Climate Week. We meet at a time of great urgency. We are reminded that we are in crucial days that may ultimately determine whether we successfully address climate change or not. Success at COP26, less than a month from now, is crucial. In Glasgow, nations must bridge existing differences, complete their outstanding agenda, work towards fully implementing the Paris Agreement, and continue to build climate action. Africa Climate Week builds momentum for a successful COP26. It's designed to bring governments, business leaders, and civil society together to engage in solution-oriented dialogues and showcase climate action. But it's also an opportunity to foster collaboration on pressing challenges and build resilience against growing climate risks in the region. I'm pleased to see the ambitious schedule you have ahead of you, covering topics ranging from long-term planning, resilience, transportation, capturing opportunities, and much more. Ambition must be the word guiding everything we do. We are in a race against time. Last month's IPCC report was unequivocal. Recent changes in the climate are widespread, rapid, and intensifying. That's why it's crucial, especially following a year-long delay, that global leaders come together in Glasgow and make the bold, courageous, and urgent decisions necessary to get the world on track with respect to the 1.5-degree climate goal under the Paris Agreement. Central to that is the issue of trust. Nations must meet the commitments already established under the agreement, and none stands out more than the fulfillment of the 100 billion from developed nations to developing. We have been discussing this issue for more than a decade. It's time for resolution. We must also make significant progress in other areas as well at COP26. For example, parties must ensure the transparency framework under the Paris Agreement is consistent with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. And parties must also advance work in areas related to adaptation, resilience, and loss and damage. The Paris Agreement established a global goal on adaptation to strengthen resilience and reduce vulnerability to climate change. At COP26, parties should agree on how to assess progress towards achieving this goal. And of course, we need to see a significant boost in climate ambition by nations in all areas, including mitigation, adaptation, and finance. Africa is a global leader with respect to adaptation financing. This was evident at the recent Global Center on Adaptation meetings in Rotterdam, which I was pleased to attend. The president of the African Development Bank Group reported that the African Development Bank's share of adaptation finance has increased from 49% in 2018 to 63% in 2020. He also noted the bank is on track to mobilize a target of 25 billion between 2020 and 2025 to support investments that address climate change and promote green growth. This is a good beginning, the kind of leadership we need to see globally, and it is why adaptation must be discussed with the same urgency as mitigation. As the impacts of extreme weather become more and more evident, and nowhere more so than in Africa, this is no longer an issue up for debate. The climate emergency is here and we need solutions now. Ladies and gentlemen, the next 2 months will be critical for the success of our collective climate change efforts here in Africa and throughout the world. Your input is vital for that success. But climate action does not begin and end with COP26. We need your transformative ideas to drive what ultimately must be a transformative decade and century. We look forward to hearing these ideas during Africa Climate Week. And we look forward to your participation in the upcoming Regional Climate Week high-level session as well. This is designed to frame the outcomes from all 3 virtual climate weeks held this year and bring the voice of the regions to COP26. I wish you the best of success in both events, and once again, thank you for your participation throughout this pivotal year. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Madam Executive Secretary, for the insights that you provide and guidance into the forthcoming discussions around the week, but also the subsequent COP that's to happen. Distinguished Excellencies and distinguished delegates, we now transit into yet another exciting talk. And our next speaker is Dr. Hafiz Ghanim. Dr. Hafiz is the Vice President of the World Bank for Africa since July 2018, a development expert with experience spanning over 30 years. Prior to his appointment, he served as the Vice President of the World Bank for the Middle East and North Africa from 2015 to 2018, overseeing World Bank engagement in 20 countries. So it's now my honor to give the floor to invite Dr. Hafiz to give his remarks. So Dr. Hafiz, you have the floor.
On behalf of the World Bank, it's a pleasure to kickstart the Africa Climate Week, along with our partners, the UN Climate Change, the UN Development Program, and the UN Environment Program. I would also particularly like to thank the government of Uganda for hosting us. In sub-Saharan Africa, we have been victims of climate change. Evidence shows that rising temperatures will have a huge impact on economic activity and jobs. At 3 degrees Celsius of global warming, GDP losses in sub-Saharan Africa could amount to nearly $3 trillion by 2100. Moreover, due to climate change, people's ability to make a living or grow enough food will be disrupted by droughts, heat waves, other shocks, yielding as many as 85 million climate migrants by 2050. Africa's focus, therefore, must be on building resilience, squarely on resilience and adaptation. Investments in new skills can pave the way for green jobs and improve productivity. As part of this, a focus on inclusiveness is critical, especially for empowering girls and women. In Uganda, forests in the Albertine region and refugee hosting areas in the north provide food, fuel, and tourism opportunities, but they're also vulnerable to climate change. The World Bank is working with local agencies to improve the sustainable management of protected areas, including 7 national parks and 4 wildlife reserves, and increase benefits for local communities. Projects like these demonstrate how resilience and adaptation efforts can also boost growth and promote green industries. Enhancing the sustainability of communities also requires shifts in policy and behavior. Plastic waste, for example, pollutes the environment, and we need better waste management to protect ecosystems as well as human health. As Africa undergoes an urban transformation, tapping into green and clean energy will be key to making these cities sustainable engines of growth. Yet 500 million people in Africa do not have access to energy. At the current pace, 500 million will still lack access in 2030, which has already helped 32 million Africans gain access to energy through a variety of off-grid and mini-grid solar solutions. This is a good example of how green technologies can contribute to development. Large-scale investments like these show how important it is to mobilize climate finance for a just energy transition that leaves no one behind. The World Bank Group's new Climate Change Action Plan, which complements the Africa Climate Business Plan, commits that over the next 5 years, 35% of World Bank Group financing will directly contribute to climate action. These plans support national action and economy-wide approaches to address the impacts of climate change, and the World Bank will continue to support countries as they align planning and policy with action to achieve a sustainable, low-carbon, and resilient future. With that, I wish you all a great climate week and great success in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafiz, for your insights that you provide. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, our next speaker is Mr. Jean-Paul Adam. Jean-Paul is the Director, Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resource Management Division of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Jean-Paul has previously served in several cabinet positions in the government of Seychelles, including as Minister of Finance, Trade and Blue Economy, where he negotiated a debt of climate change adaptation swap in 2015, among others. Mr. Jean-Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Bob, and good morning to everyone from Addis Ababa. So, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister from Uganda, and our gracious hosts for Africa Climate Week, Honorable Ministers, heads of delegation, the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, Vice President of the World Bank, the Assistant Secretary General, and dear representatives of AFDB, African Union, and all other partner organizations. We are obviously disappointed that we could not have had this Climate Week since last year, but every week is in fact Climate Week in Africa, because we cannot separate the issue of climate resilience from that of sustainable development. We will succeed in sustainable development if we can hardwire climate resilience into our national economies and successfully address national action to tackle climate change within a global framework that also provides decisive interventions. At both the national and global level, the conversation is built around finance, because the COVID-19 pandemic has further narrowed the fiscal space available to African countries to mobilize the desperately needed resources. We need the $100 billion that has been promised for the most vulnerable, as climate change impacts exacerbate existing challenges. African countries are having, in some cases, to dedicate up to 9% of their budgets to tackle disasters and environmental impacts associated with climate change. Meanwhile, projections done by the Economic Commission for Africa's African Climate Policy Center shows that African countries will lose an average of between 2 to 5% of GDP in even moderate warming scenarios. Extremely vulnerable regions, such as the Sahel, may lose up to 15%, while Africa's islands are also at the front line. The $100 billion is therefore just the first step, as we need to have a detailed schedule of resources that will be available for African countries to invest in a green recovery. The key is to have predictable resources and to allocate them to the areas that will have the most impact. Therefore, we need to know the resources that will be able to be mobilized at national level as well as at global level, and we need to have a detailed schedule as well beyond 2025. The African Union has paved the way for this with the adoption of an African Green Stimulus Program in January of this year. The Economic Commission for Africa will continue to support the African Union and its member states to domesticate the principles of this program and also adopt appropriate resource mobilization strategies. Mobilization of resource also implies embracing innovation. We have seen debt levels in Africa spiral, and therefore debt for adaptation swaps are an example of financing innovation that need to be mainstreamed as part of development finance options. We also need to ensure that private sector financial flows can be efficiently channeled into Africa. And this means, for example, supporting the issuance of green and blue bonds, noting that currently less than 1% of global green bond issuances are from Africa. We can also support African countries to better protect their natural heritage while linking them to livelihoods through climate-smart agriculture, reforestation, ecotourism, and similar nature-based solutions. And this would also create a platform for Africa to monetize its carbon sinks. And we hope at COP26 to have progress on a global carbon price. We must also situate the imperative of green and blue economy transition as a just and equitable transition. And we must be able to define more clearly what this transition looks like. We recognize that it will be different for different African countries, from Africa's islands to its landlocked states, from low-income countries to upper middle-income and high-income states. We need a path which provides bespoke solutions, but all of which lead to low-carbon, sustainable development. African countries face an unparalleled challenge, but which is also mirrored by an opportunity. By redesigning African economies in line with the principles of the AU Green Stimulus Program, we can accelerate growth and inclusion. Studies done by ECA in partnership with Oxford University have shown a higher return on investment in terms of jobs by 250% and a higher return in terms of value addition of 420% for green investments compared to fossil fuel-based sectors. But these redesigns do not happen automatically. It requires alignment of policies at national and regional level and matching of finance to ambition from both domestic sources and external funding. ECA will support the continued development of the Green Stimulus Program and national initiatives to complement it. We look forward to hearing further of priorities for national action in this climate week and how we can provide the support that is required. Our thanks to the government of Uganda for their support and leadership, as well as to the UNFCCC and all partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jean Paul, for your message. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, our next speaker is Ms. Ahuna Isiakono. Ms. Ahuna is the UNDP Assistant Administrator, but also Director of the Regional Bureau of Africa. She leads over 400 staff, implementing a 1.2 billion annual development program in 46 African countries. She's deeply passionate about equality, inclusion, reshaping narratives on Africa, and mobilization for the youth entrepreneurs and the dignity of African people. Ms. Ahuna, you have the floor.
Warm greetings to all participants and welcome to this Africa Climate Week. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an unprecedented moment. You know, human activity is now the dominant force shaping the planet. And this new geological epoch, which is called the Anthropocene, is colliding with and worsening existing inequalities. It is leading to significant development reversals. As global warming continues to rise, more extreme climate events are projected to increase both in frequency and intensity. In recent months, Africa has witnessed devastating floods, an invasion of desert locusts, and now we see the looming specter of drought because of La Nina event. COVID-19 amplifies the complexity and interconnectivity of these risks, underscoring the need for greater attention to coherent and more integrated approaches towards mitigating and adapting to climate change, and also building climate resilience. Nothing short of great transformation in how we live, how we work, and how we cooperate is needed to change the path on which we are now. And so, as we kick off the Africa Climate Week, what is truly at stake is how to ensure that this climate crisis, the biodiversity collapse, the ocean acidification, for example, can actually be resolved. How do we live in harmony with the planet on which we depend for our very survival? And how can we ensure that African solutions are woven into the global push to reverse disaster? Through UNDP's Climate Promise, which is the world's largest offer of support for nationally determined contributions, we are assisting 119 countries globally to respond to these challenges through bold national climate pledges. In Africa, UNDP's Climate Promise supports 43 countries to update, revise, and also enhance their NDCs. We are also working closely with countries to scale up climate ambitions through national adaptation plans. Because we know that governments can't act alone, UNDP is working to create engagement platforms and to empower communities, activists, youth, smallholder farmers, businesses, the creatives, investors, and academia. They all have a role to play in delivering the promises of the Paris Agreement. Unlocking climate finance flows is also very key. UNDP's contribution lies in supporting countries, governments, to understand the national financial landscape through integrated national financing frameworks, so far in 35 countries. This helps with mobilizing a wide range of public, private, and domestic, as well as international financing sources. And we are observing about 70% of financing strategies are actually prioritizing climate change, energy transition, and other key objectives like gender equality and social protection. And so as we navigate the headwinds of this COVID-19 pandemic, we must look beyond recovery towards 2030. And in here is a unique opportunity to ensure that recovery strategies are climate smart. This Africa Climate Week is about solutions. I know that we can dig deeper and we can emerge on the other side with rich and context-relevant pathways for Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the road to Glasgow must offer solutions for Africa. So let us work together to secure a successful outcome for people and for planet. I thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Ahuna, for your compelling message and passion for Africa. I actually witnessed this passion when you're working in Uganda some time ago as a resident representative. So thank you very much. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, next on our agenda is Mr. Alhamdu Dosuma. Mr. Alhamdu Dosuma is currently the Acting Director and Manager for Climate and Green Growth within the Africa Development Bank. He is responsible for managing a team of climate change and climate finance officers and leading the bank's efforts on climate change and green growth across Africa. Mr. Dosuma has worked as an officer in charge of the bank's climate finance division, leading the bank's climate finance initiatives. Before that, he's also worked as a team leader for energy efficiency under the Africa Development Bank. So it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Alhamdu Dosuma to give us his remarks. Mr. Alhamdu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, Greetings from the African Development Bank. Let me first thank the government of Uganda for hosting the 2021 Africa Climate Week. I would like also to thank Her Excellency Espinosa for her commendation of the FDB's leadership in climate action. The Africa Climate Week, which is taking place today, is a primordial event for us to explore climate challenges and opportunities on our continent by highlighting our collaboration on climate actions. It is important to note that the agenda of climate resilience concerns us all. As the Multilateral Development Bank based in Africa, the African Development Bank is committed to building resilient economies in Africa against threats such as climate change, now compounded with a health crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Building green recovery programs for the bank's regional member countries is our objective. The climate crisis is now in code red as per the recent IPCC report. Currently, 70% of the top 10 most climate vulnerable countries in the world are in Africa. Last year, as the world was going through the COVID-19 lockdown, the region hosting the Africa Climate Week was hit by several extreme weather events and by locust invasion, further exacerbating food insecurity. It is estimated that the annual cost of adapting to climate change in Africa were between 7 to 15 billion per year, starting in 2020. And this is expected to rise up to 30 billion in 2030 and to 50 billion by 2050. Yet, Africa receives a minimal portion of global climate finance, currently estimated at only 3%. It is for this reason that the African Development Bank convened a leader summit on the COVID-19 and climate emergency earlier in April this year in order to sound the alarm on the effects of these twin threats. We are therefore encouraged by the global leaders' announcements on climate finance at last week's UN General Assembly. We hope this will culminate into a positive outcome at COP26 on the pledge to provide 100 billion per year by 2020 as climate finance from developed countries to developing countries. It is also important to highlight that investing in nature is also good for business. Globally, it has been estimated that investing $2.7 trillion per year through 2030 in innovative technologies to protect and restore the world's natural capital would generate business opportunities of about 10 trillion annually and create 395 million jobs by 2030. The African Development Bank has prioritized climate action. Since the entry into force of the Paris Agreement in 2016, the African Development Bank has mobilized $12.3 billion in climate finance and became the first multilateral development bank to achieve parity in adaptation and integration finance in 2018. We exceeded this parity to achieve 63% adaptation finance at the end of last year. In collaboration with the Global Center on Adaptation, the African Development Bank has committed to mobilize $25 billion by 2025 towards climate adaptation action in Africa. Last year, the African Development Bank issued 3 billion COVID-19 and 1 billion Sweden krona social bond. This year, we issued another 600 million Australian dollar, 1 billion Sweden krona, and 1 billion Norwegian kron of green bonds. This Africa Climate Week, therefore, presents us with an opportunity to dialogue with partners in order to generate pipeline of bankable projects and programs to invest these proceeds for Africa's green recovery. There is no better time to enhance global efforts in adaptation and resilience than now. Governments around the world have spent over $20 trillion in COVID-19 relief stimulus packages. The world, therefore, has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a more resilient, climate-smart future by integrating climate adaptation into these stimulus packages. In collaboration with the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, the African Development Bank will support the implementation of the Africa Green Stimulus Program, which aims to build a more coherent and coordinated continental response to COVID-19 and catalyze funding to achieve transformative and more sustainable development pathways with private and public investment. Let me conclude by reiterating that as we face this existential challenge, the African Development Bank stands ready to deploy its resources to save people and planet in order to generate wealth for our continent. I thank you all for your attention and wish you an excellent Africa Climate Week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alamedu, for your message. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, next online is Mr. Mark Radka. Mark is the Acting Deputy Director of Energy and Climate Branch of the Economy Division of the UN Environment. Mark has over 30 years of professional experience in the field of environmental policy and management. Before his current posting, Mark headed the Economy Division of Energy and Climate Branch, but before that, he also served in the UN Environment Office in the Asia and Pacific for several years and was a coordinating lead author of the IPCC Special Report on Methodological and Technological Issues in Technology Transfer. It's now my honor and privilege to virtually invite Mark to deliver his remarks. Mark, you have the floor.
Countries on the African continent simply must take the opportunity of a green economy to support sustainable development and resilience to climate change as they revive their economies after COVID-19. The risks of climate change lay out the case for rolling out the green pandemic recovery in a manner that unlocks socioeconomic opportunities that ensure a just transition for Africa. Friends, Africa has the potential to become a leader in creating a climate-proof economy. Tens of millions of green jobs can be created if we support sustainable agricultural practices, climate-resilient infrastructure, if we expand clean energy and low-carbon transport and mobility, and if we invest in our natural infrastructure, making sure that ecosystems deliver the essential services on which our societies and economies rely. The benefits greatly outweigh the costs of these actions. Globally, transitioning to a nature-positive economy could generate up to $10 trillion in additional annual business revenue and cost savings and create 395 million new jobs by 2030. The Africa Green Stimulus Program is a key step in taking advantage of this opportunity. Let me applaud countries in the region that are already walking the talk. Nigeria will spend $620 million on sustainable energy and create 250,000 jobs while providing solar power to 5 million households by 2023. Senegal has devoted $100 million to rural infrastructure development that expands hydro-agriculture. Kenya has devoted $60 million to improve environment, water, and sanitation facilities. But more needs to be done. Africa and other developing regions need more than $70 billion to adapt to our changing climate. But as large as this sum seems, Africa already invests in adaptation at a rate of 2% of its GDP each year. The obligation is on all of us to maximize these investments and guide them with strong national commitments and NDCs, making the investments benefit the most vulnerable parts of society. Let's be bold and seize transformational opportunities to increase resilience. to climate change while decarbonizing sectors, ensuring sustainable and resilient economic growth. Let's empower youth, Africa's great strength, in climate adaptation efforts, resilience building, and green growth. Africa Climate Week can help us accelerate action on these transformational opportunities. The green recovery is an opportunity for African countries to become more resilient to the impacts of climate change while mitigating and avoiding emissions, securing livelihoods, and increasing job opportunities. Getting the recovery right is an opportunity to grow faster, better, and greener, and bring all of us closer to a greener and more inclusive future for all of Africa. So much more can be gained by working together, and the Africa Climate Week is an excellent opportunity to share experiences and learn from one another, to get motivated to bring about lasting change. We look forward very much to continuing the collaboration with all of you. Together, we can make a difference.
Thanks very much, Mark. Next on the agenda is Mr. Hassan Nyambe Nyambe. Mr. Nyambe Nyambe is the Acting Director of Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy with the Africa Union Commission. He is responsible for environment, climate change, water, biodiversity, disaster risk reduction, forestry, land management, meteorology, and wildlife. He brings extensive professional experience spanning over 15 years to his career and has been in international organizations covering across the region. It's my honor and pleasure to now invite Mr. Nyambe Nyambe to deliver his statement. Mr. Nyambe Nyambe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and allow me to join those who spoke before me and recognize the existing protocols, and of course, all the excellencies, honorable ministers, and the panelists who are actually part of this meeting. I would want to recognize them all. And on behalf of Her Excellency Ambassador Josepha Sako, Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, I have the honor actually to deliver these remarks at this important occasion, and of course to recognize the role played by the host government, which is the Republic of Uganda, and of course the UNFCCC Secretariat and all the partners in putting up together such a wonderful program for the week. Africa is never the same. The challenges faced by the continent have been compounded by the changing climate as well as COVID-19. Consequently, Africa has been dislodged from her development path to achieve the aspirations of Agenda 2063 as well as the SDGs. We are, however, pleased that we have seen some of the initiatives that are being showcased, which offer promise in terms of transformation on the continent. And among them, of course, they include those that are related to agriculture, such as agroecology programs. And we have seen also the improvement of cook stoves, for example, in Uganda, the water strategy in Cape Town, and of course, the early warning systems for floods, as well as improved access to energy in Sierra Leone, which actually has a gender dimension. And that is critical given the fact that women are disproportionately affected by climate change. All these, they give hope. However, they are not enough to be able to solve the climate crisis as well as to transform our development. What Africa needs actually is to put more effort or to invest in research and development, technology, and of course, the needed funds that have been highlighted by other speakers, as well as collaborative partnerships and enabling policies for us to be able to transform. And COVID-19, of course, has actually impacted negatively, as I've already indicated. And in response to this, the African Union Commission has worked with member states and, of course, ECA and UK government, NDC partnership and others to develop what is called the Green Recovery Action Plan. And that Green Recovery Action Plan actually prioritizes key sectors such as energy, looking at issues of energy efficiency and just transition, nature-based solutions and biodiversity, resilient agriculture, and of course, green cities, as well as climate finance, which is badly needed to be able to transform the continent. And I'm happy to inform you that we have also started implementation of the African Blue Economy Strategy, which aims to integrate blue carbon as well as aquatic ecosystems into the climate change agenda. We are also actually finalizing the climate change strategy with the aim to make sure that the vulnerabilities of our continent are addressed and we are able to identify key sectors for transformation, and of course bearing in mind that ours is about adapting to the changing climate. We are also at a stage where we are establishing the early warning system for the continent to natural hazards, given the fact that disasters are projected to increase both in intensity and frequency in response to the changing climate. And as I conclude, I want to assure you that the African Union Commission remains committed to work with all the partners in supporting our member states. And this is actually a call for those who are available to make sure that member states are supported in order for the transformation that is needed, as well as for their ambitious dreams to be fulfilled. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyambe, for your message. Distinguished Excellencies and distinguished delegates and friends, in wrapping up this session, allow me to say the following. First, join me to thank all the excellent speakers and input that we've had from everybody that has put forward their thoughts in this discussion. I hope you've benefited from the compelling and insightful messages that have come through from all the speakers. But also, join me to thank everybody else that has managed to hold up with us from start until finish towards the end. Again, I also hope even those that are online and signed up onto the platform have benefited from the messages that have come through. A lot has been said from all the excellent speakers, but I would like to summarize this in about 3 or 4 ways. One is that a lot of discussion has been so much around resilient building. And that's so much understandable because, as one of the speakers said, we face climate risks every day, but we also do face these challenges on a daily basis. So resilience building becomes a priority. So at the heart of this discussion, resilience building has been key. But also, building resilience alone does not mean ambition enough. We've also had lots of discussions around resilience, but also in terms of building new skills and ensuring that inclusive development, a focus on inclusiveness takes shape. In order to actualize resilience building, I think there's also been discussions around ensuring that we have plans for resilience building, especially from medium to long term, bearing in mind the technological, the capacity building, and the finances that are required to implement the plans that we come up with. Finally, there's been a lot of discussions around what the focus of the COP26 should be. And I think every speaker that has come through has enlisted a bit of the issues that we'd like to see coming up in Glasgow in next month. Distinguished excellencies and distinguished delegates, this only marks the beginning of the opening ceremony, but does not actually mark the entire end of the 3 days activities. As intimated to you, there's a ministerial event for the climate weeks taking place in October, and all these thoughts will ensure the outcome of these from these sessions are captured and framed within the larger context of COP26. But this will never have been possible without, again, the support of the core partners and the additional regional partners. And with that, we'd like to thank them so very much once again, the UNFCCC, the UNDP, UN Environment, and the World Bank, including the regional partners, Africa Development Bank, Africa Union Commission, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, including the COP26 presidency. So we hope we've all benefited from this talk and looking forward for further discussions that will come out of this. So with that, I'd like to thank you so very much on behalf of the government of Uganda for being a part of this conversation, and looking forward to further engagement in the run-up to COP26. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.